When you buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too. This free Sonic 2 is a $54.99 value. You get 2 Sonics for the price of 1. Sonic 2 fits easily into any tackle box. Made from a space-age polymer plastic for years of family fun, and pets love it too. Buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1 and get Sonic 2 free. Act now. Wiener Dog Sweater sold separately.
Hello everybody, I am your host Too Elusive, and this time we're going to be taking a look at Sonic 2. Now, truth be told, I have started off on the Sonic franchise with Sonic 2. So going back to this one was not only a bit of a nostalgia trip, but it also made me realize that Sonic 2 is actually the very first title where Sonic got a huge head start in his career. Like, everything that we're going to be covering in this review are things that we're going to be seeing repeated in other Sonic games. So it goes without saying that Sonic 2 is the very game that gave Sonic the jumpstart he needed for greatness.
And that is no joke, my friend. Replaying this game has made me realize that this is the first Sonic game that captures exactly how Sonic should play. Almost every title that came after Sonic 2 uses its refined mechanics as it's seen in future titles, including some of his 3D ones like Sonic Adventure. The objective behind Sonic 2 is pretty much the same as the first. Race to the end, beat up Robotnik, and save the animals at a rate that not even PETA could achieve in their dreams. While the main objective has remained unchanged, the quality of life changes Sonic 2 brings to the table will have players experiencing an entirely different game as a whole. To start things off, Sonic's overall controls have been improved. All the momentum gaining issues that plagued the first game were nowhere to be found in its sequel, and Sonic has been given a new move on top of that. Sonic 2 introduces the ability to spin dash in place, which is done by holding down the D-pad and mashing the jump button. So now players can activate the spin dash at will without having to gain enough momentum in order to pull it off, which is great for picking up speed from a standstill. In addition to Sonic's refined controls, he now has a new friend traveling along with him who goes by the name of Tails Miles Per Hour. I gotta love those speed puns. He's that orange fox you'd see along with Sonic in the title screen, and he got his name due to the fact that he has 2 tails instead of 1. He uses them as a propeller to jet across the stage or take it to the skies, even though you kind of have to take it at face value since the only time you ever see him fly in this game is when he respawns. For the most part, his controls are no different than Sonic's. But despite him being the exact same character, he introduces a new feature in this game known as co-op. At any point in the game, as long as Tails is set to tag along with you on your adventure, another player can join and take control of Tails' actions. The second player doesn't have to worry about hindering the first player either when they're hit, as Tails is practically invincible and doesn't lose any rings. Plus, if the first player happens to outspeed him, he'll just fly back on the screen like nothing happened. Tails is also a great partner to have when fighting bosses, as he can attack them too, effectively bringing them down much faster than normal. Tails' inclusion also introduces 2-player mode, where the players can go head to head and race to the finish with 3 zones to choose from, or see who can gain the most rings in the 2-player version of these special stages. I should mention that the player also has the option to play as Sonic by himself, or outright play as Tails if they prefer to have him fly solo, even though he can't. For the most part, Tails is a pretty awesome tag-along to have, if it were not for one major flaw in having him around, a flaw that I'll bring up once I get to that point. In the meantime, let's talk about the game flow. This time around you have 10 zones to clear, which is a pretty big increase compared to the 6 you had in the first title. However, almost all of these zones have been cut down to 2 instead of 3, which is a major improvement already. Not only that, but the levels themselves are also really fun. Unlike the first game, all of these stages have been made with Sonic's core gameplay in mind, so they have a nice balance between speed and platforming. Even the Aquatic Ruin Zone, which is a water-themed level, is pretty fun compared to the not-so-enjoyable Labyrinth Zone in the past. Sonic 2's levels are also backed up with colorful visuals that are appealing to the eye, and it has one of the best soundtracks in its series. Another improvement they made is the gameplay and how the player is able to access special stages. In the previous title, the player had to have at least 50 rings and jump into the goal ring in order to enter the special stages, but the issue with that method is that you could miss the ring entirely. Plus, hogging 50 rings in the later stages in the game can be pretty rage-inducing. In Sonic 2, however, they streamlined this by having the player enter the special stages stages through these checkpoints. That's right, these lovely signposts that had originally served as the respawn markers are now your gateway into these special stages. All you need is 50 rings to enter and you're good to go. Upon entering these special stages, you're greeted to this half pipe that consistently has Sonic running forward, kind of like on rails. Your only controls is left, right, and jump, and you're tasked with collecting a certain amount of rings before you reach the checkpoint while avoiding bombs along the way. Failure to reach that amount of rings will boot you back to the regular stage, but you can try again if you rack up enough rings and find a different checkpoint to pass. I also hope you are a fan of these special stages, as they'll make a return in later installments. My one major gripe with these levels is when you have to make any turns. You can never tell what's going to come around the corner, often forcing you to guess if it's rings or bombs. In the first few levels, they don't seem to be too much of a problem since the stage provides more than enough rings to correct your mistakes. But in later stages, when the rings become more scarce, it leaves very little room for error, and you'll find most of these screw-ups will come from the fact that you can never tell what's coming. It often feels like you have to memorize the later levels in order to clear them, or have the reaction time of a god. Now, one thing that does seem a bit inconsistent with this newer method of entering the special stages is that when you return, you lose all of your rings and power-ups you had prior to entering. On the other hand, this can also work in your favor because the stage resets itself, allowing the player to recollect the same rings, find a different checkpoint, and go for another Chaos Emerald if they wish. So you could potentially gain all 7 Chaos Emeralds by the time you clear both acts in Emerald Hill. Now, the previous game didn't really give you a good reason to get all of the Chaos Emeralds, but if you manage to collect all 7 Emeralds here, you'll be able to transform into Super Sonic. This form grants twice as much speed, twice as much jump height, and invincibility at the cost of your rings slowly draining away. Just have 50 rings in hand, jump for joy, and bam! You're now filled with Saiyan energy. Keep in mind that this only works with Sonic, as Tails doesn't have a super form, at least not in this game. I only wish that Sonic didn't have to go super every time he jumps though, as there are some moments where I would much prefer to remain as base form Sonic, more so for precise platforming, which is much harder to do when you're not used to a speed increase. Now, as much as I want to keep praising this game, there are some issues I do need to address, some which you are already aware of. First, let's start with Sonic's companion Tails. You probably might have noticed that throughout most of the footage I've shown in this review, I don't have Tails as a partner. That's because while he's great to have around for anything else, it's a completely different story when you're trying to collect the Chaos Emeralds. You see, Tails' AI will always respawn about a second later after the player's input. This also applies in special stages, meaning he's prone to getting hit by the bombs very often. And unlike the regular stages, Tails will lose your rings if he is hit. Another point I have to make here is that the ring count requirement for clearing these special stages is higher if you happen to have Tails as a partner. This was most likely programmed this way for balancing reasons in the event that the second player were to join you on the Emerald Hunt. But this is all the more reason why you may not want to have Tails as a tag-along. If you're not going for the Chaos Emeralds, however, by all means, let them fly. Next, let's talk about these stages. There's 2 in particular that stick out as far as problems go, and I'll start with Mystic Cave first. As much as I love the soundtrack that plays in this level as it gives me flashback to Inspector Gadget's theme, one thing that bothered me is the infamous spike pit of doom that you can encounter should you happen to fall into it. No joke, if you fall into this thing, there's literally no way out. The only thing you can do is accept death and hope that you weren't on your last life when this happens. It's even worse as Super Sonic because you'll have to wait there for the entire rain counter to drain before you're even given the option to die. Now, the reason why this spike pit exists in the first place is because it's supposed to prevent entry from an incomplete level that can be accessed by falling into that pit. This is known as the Hidden Palace Zone. It was a level that was scrapped during the game's development, and rather than removing that pit entirely, they decided to leave it there and place spikes instead, which feels like a punishment for finding a mistake that they've made. What they could have done instead of this was to place springs at the bottom that would launch us back up, which would have been much more forgiving. The other stage I need to bring up is the Metropolis Zone, an infamous level that is hated throughout the community and for several good reasons too. It is the stage that houses 3 of the most dickish enemies throughout all of Sonic's history. The Asteron, the Shellcracker, and the granddaddy of them all, the slicers. While they're all hated for different reasons, what they have in common is the fact that they're placed in areas where you can easily run smack into them or have little to no leg room to avoid their onslaught. If you're not dealing with the Shellcracker's haymaker while navigating through narrow passages, or the Asteron's needles when they self-destruct, you're dealing with the slicer's obnoxious blades that covers more ledge get up options in Smash Bros. Seriously, if you try to jump or run at these guys, their slicers are always going to hit you, making them the perfect edge guards. You literally need to take your time going through this zone, otherwise these badniks are going to blindside you at every corner. Now I'm starting to see where Dimps gets its inspiration for its enemy placement in the Advance and Rush series. And if the enemies were not enough, this is the only zone in the game with 3 acts, which means that it will overstay its welcome pretty easily with all the bullcrap that it's thrown at you. What I find absolutely puzzling about this stage difficulty is that it's not even the last zone in the game, and the last 2 zones are pretty tame compared to this one. Sure, the airship will have you playing extremely cautious due to the large amounts of bottomless pits, but it only lasts for 1 act and the stage itself is pretty short. Still, even with all of its shortcomings, Sonic 2 still holds up pretty well and has aged nicely over the years. Unlike its predecessor, it hasn't gained as many re-releases, but it did manage to get the Christian Whitehead treatment on mobile, and we're gonna go ahead and have a look at that next. There really isn't much to go over with the mobile version, except this one now gives you the ability to play as Tails with Flight and Knuckles. Granted, you could already do this in the original game, but you needed to have Sonic and Knuckles' cartridge in order to do so back then, and place Sonic 2 on top of its lock slot. Special stages are now fully rendered in 3D, the whole game is now optimized to run at 60 frames, and you even have the option to turn on the elemental shields from Sonic 3, which is pretty neat. There's also more multiplayer options, and the game also includes a complete version of the Hidden Palace Zone, even with its own boss. The stage itself is accessed through that spike pit of doom I've mentioned earlier, the way that it was intended to be. The game also includes some other neat touch-ups such as Supersonic requiring an additional button to press after jumping rather than jumping once, and the game even includes a post-credit scene where we see Robotnik's fortress crash onto Angel Island. While Robotnik is busy throwing a tantrum, Knuckles is seen watching from the bushes similar to how it looked on the box art from Sonic 3, foreshadowing the events on the next game. Now I would end the review here, but during the time when I was editing the footage and piecing it all together, Sega dropped the ageist version of Sonic 2 on the Switch, so why don't we go on ahead and take a quick look into that and see what that one has to offer. Much like its predecessor, this is a direct port of the second title that comes with similar features like Sonic's drop dash and the rain keep mode making its return. Knuckles is now playable from the gate without the need of lock-on technology, and for those who don't know what that is, here's the short version. You basically need to own both Sonic and Knuckles along with a copy of Sonic 2 on the Sega Genesis in order to access this mode originally. With that being said, you can see why it's a much bigger deal than you think. Along with that, there is a mode that will give you the ability to play as Supersonic without the need to collect all 7 of the Chaos Emeralds. So if you've never experienced it before, now you have the chance to do so. Interestingly enough, they have also included a rumble feature in this game, which is a nice touch for the overall experience, and players now have the option to pick between the national version or the Japanese version to play on. One other mode they've added is Challenger mode, with Sonic and Knuckles as playable characters. You're probably thinking that this is a time attack to see who can earn the best times on each of the stages, as this will enable you to upload your scores and replays to the leaderboards online. But that is not the case. Instead, your main goal is to collect 100 rings and reach the goalpost as quickly as possible on Emerald Hill Act 1. Yes, this is the only stage you're able to play on, and it's also going to be your only method of flexing, unfortunately. Now, despite all of these added features in the game, it saddens me to say that it does not have any of the quality of life changes that the mobile version has. No elemental shields, no hidden palace zone. Oh, and did I mention that Tails still can't fly?
So what gives?
I can understand not having any of the other stuff, but is it really that hard to include Tails' flight ability? You can get Sonic his drop dash and bring a whole different character into the game that was originally restricted by having the lock-on technology to play him. But when it comes to Tails' flight ability,
that's no good.
It also really makes me wonder why they can't just port over the mobile versions to modern consoles and PC in the first place. Like the ageist version of Sonic 1, this game also costs $8 to obtain. But unlike the previous version, I will definitely say that this one is well worth the price. No, it may not have all the bells and whistles that the mobile version has, but in the event that you don't really want to play the mobile version because, well, it's on a phone.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones.
this is actually a pretty nice alternative. After my experience with this port, I can say that the game does come with enough features that makes the price worthwhile. Sonic 2 really did set the tone for a lot of games in the future. Supersonic, multiplayer, momentum-based platforming at its finest, the start of multiple playable characters, and 7 Chaos Emeralds. Sonic the Hedgehog may have been the very first game, but Sonic 2 is truly where the Hedgehog's legacy has begun.
And there you have it, folks. Sonic 2 is easily a game that I can recommend to people who have never played a Sonic title before, so if you ever needed a good entryway into the series, Sonic 2 is your game. Next time we jump in on this, we're going to be talking about Sonic CD, a game that served as the Sega CD's can opener when that system came out. As always, play until your thumbs fall off. I'm your host, Too Elusive, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.